These JRPGs have heroes who devour people, orchestrate apocalypses, and one that might be better than Final Fantasy VII. Let's dive in. Meet Velvet Crow. She's not your typical JRPG hero saving the world with the power of friendship. She's a demon-possessed woman on a revenge quest so brutal it makes Kratos look like a motivational speaker. When her brother-in-law sacrifices her little brother to summon demons, Velvet doesn't just get angry, she becomes something monstrous, literally eating her enemies alive with a demonic arm. Here's what nobody tells you about Berseria: you're not the good guy. The entire game forces you to question every single moral choice the protagonist makes. She beats people for information, she manipulates innocent allies, she burns down entire buildings if they get in her way, and somehow, by the end, you're rooting for her completely. Most Tales games play it safe with cookie-cutter heroes and predictable storylines. Berseria said, "Screw that," and delivered the darkest entry in the entire franchise. Critics called it too edgy, too violent, too depressing. They missed the point entirely. This isn't edge for the sake of edge. It's a masterclass in character development that makes you uncomfortable on purpose. If Berseria made you uncomfortable with its moral complexity, wait until you meet a JRPG that literally uses death as a gameplay mechanic. Persona 3 Reload is the game every Persona 5 fan needs to play, but most won't because they think graphics from 2006 look too old. But don't worry, Reload is the remake. Anyways, here's what they're missing: the most philosophically brutal game Atlus ever made. Picture this: you're a high school student who shoots himself in the head every single battle to summon demons. Not metaphorically. You literally put a gun-shaped device to your temple and pull the trigger while your classmates watch. The game doesn't flinch. It doesn't explain it away. Death is power, and power requires sacrifice. But that's just the surface-level insanity. The real gut punch comes when you realize the entire story is about accepting your own mortality. Many characters you befriend are dealing with loss, trauma, or the fear of dying. The main villain isn't some cosmic evil, it's humanity's collective death wish. And the ending? Let's just say it redefines what heroic sacrifice actually means. Most people bounced off the original because of its brutal difficulty spikes and outdated mechanics. Reload fixes everything wrong with the combat while keeping everything that made the story devastating. The new voice acting hits harder. The updated personas feel more powerful. But they kept that suffocating atmosphere that makes you question why you're even fighting. So, you think mobile games can't produce console masterpieces? Granblue Fantasy Relink is about to shatter that prejudice into a million pieces. This is what happens when a gacha game gets a AAA budget and the team behind some of the most gorgeous 2D art in gaming history. The combat feels like Devil May Cry had a baby with Monster Hunter, then raised it on the most insane boss fights you've ever seen. We're talking screen-filling dragons that require genuine strategy to take down. Combos that flow so smoothly, you'll forget you're not playing a dedicated action game. And cooperative gameplay that actually requires teamwork instead of button mashing your way to victory. But the real crime is how this game got buried under "it's not a real JRPG" debates. Critics couldn't figure out how to categorize it. Too action-heavy for turn-based purists, too story-focused for pure action fans, too beautiful for people who think JRPGs need to look retro to be authentic. So it fell through the cracks while everyone argued about what it wasn't, instead of appreciating what it actually is. The story hits every classic JRPG note perfectly. Unlikely heroes, world-ending threats, power of friendship, but delivers it with production values that put most AAA studios to shame. The orchestral soundtrack will give you goosebumps, and the character development actually makes you care about saving the world instead of just going through the motions. You think you've played Kingdom Hearts 2? No, you haven't. Unless you've experienced Final Mix, you've only seen the watered-down version Disney forced on Western audiences. This is the Kingdom Hearts game that fans have been obsessing over for decades, and it's absolutely nothing like the button-mashing Disney fever dream most people remember. Mixing Mickey Mouse with emo teenagers and cosmic horror shouldn't work, but somehow it does. Final Mix takes that insanity and cranks it to 11 with boss fights. So brutal they make other JRPG bosses look casual. We're talking about data organization battles that require frame-perfect timing and combos so complex you'll need a PhD in button inputs. This version completely changes how you see the entire Kingdom Hearts story. Those 13 organization members you fought, Final Mix lets you battle supercharged versions that reveal their true personalities through pure combat intensity. The lingering will fight alone is worth the price of admission. This is a boss so legendary that Kingdom Hearts fans still make pilgrimage videos attempting to beat it 15 years later. Time travel stories in JRPGs are usually hot garbage, convoluted plots, paradoxes that make no sense, and characters who act like they've never heard of cause and effect. Star Ocean First Departure. R looked at that mess and said, "Hold my beer, we're going to do this right." Then it delivered the most underrated time travel story in JRPG history while everyone was busy playing Chrono Trigger for the millionth time. Here's the setup that hooked me instantly. You're not some chosen hero stumbling into time magic. You're a medieval swordsman who gets rescued by space cops from the future, then dragged into an interdimensional war that threatens to erase your entire planet from existence. And the kicker? The advanced civilization trying to save you has technology so far beyond your understanding, it might as well be magic. The original Star Ocean was trapped on the Super Famicom, locked away from Western audiences for over a decade. By the time First Departure R finally got a proper localization, everyone had moved on to shinier games. Their mistake. This remaster doesn't just update the graphics, it fixes the translation that butchered the original's complex themes about cultural interference and technological responsibility. Brainpunk isn't a genre you hear about often, but Scarlet Nexus made it look so effortless that everyone assumed it was just another generic anime action game. Big mistake. This is what happens when developers stop playing it safe and create something genuinely unique, then watch it get buried because it doesn't fit into neat little marketing categories. The setup sounds insane because it is insane. Psychic teenagers with weapons made of pure thought, fighting monsters that literally fall from the sky like some twisted meteor shower. Your brain becomes the ultimate weapon, turning everyday objects into devastating attacks. Trash cans become missiles. Street signs become swords. The environment itself becomes your arsenal, and it never stops feeling absolutely incredible. But here's where it gets twisted. The story isn't about saving the world from aliens. It's about government experiments on children, corporate conspiracy, and what happens when society decides some people are too dangerous to live freely. The monsters falling from the sky, they're not invaders, they're victims. The dual protagonist system lets you experience the same story from two completely different perspectives, revealing plot twists that recontextualize everything you thought you knew. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne will crush your soul so thoroughly, you'll start questioning why video games were even invented. This is the JRPG that looks at your carefully planned strategies, laughs in demonic, then kills your entire party with a single critical hit because you forgot to buff your agility stat. But here's the thing that separates Nocturne from every other difficult game. It's not hard for the sake of being hard, it's philosophically brutal. You're not saving the world, you're watching it end. Then deciding what kind of apocalypse you want to rebuild from the ashes. Every major decision forces you to choose between competing ideologies, and none of them are clearly right or wrong. The story starts with Tokyo getting swallowed by a supernatural catastrophe, everyone you know dying horribly, and you getting transformed into a demon-human hybrid, the Demi-Fiend. Most JRPGs would spend 50 hours explaining why this happened. Nocturne shrugs and says, "Figure it out yourself," while throwing you into a wasteland filled with creatures that want to philosophy debate you to death. While everyone's obsessing over Cloud's spiky hair and identity crisis, they're completely sleeping on a game that features the most successful villain in JRPG history. Kefka doesn't just threaten to destroy the world, he actually does it halfway through the game. Most JRPGs tease world-ending catastrophe for 40 hours, then let you stop it in the nick of time. Final Fantasy VI lets Kefka win. The world ends. Everyone you care about gets scattered across a broken wasteland, and you spend the second half of the game picking up the pieces of civilization while this psychotic clown god rules over the apocalypse from his tower in the sky. The Pixel Remaster finally gave this masterpiece the visual treatment it deserved. Every character has a complete arc that could carry their own game. Terra's struggle with her half-human identity, Shadow's assassin past catching up with him, and Celes, don't even get me started on Celes. Her unalive attempt scene hits harder than any cutscene in modern gaming, and it's told with 16-bit sprites and a handful of text boxes. Everyone said this game was too slow, too long, too much talking. They were absolutely right, and that's exactly why it's brilliant. Trails of Cold Steel is the JRPG equivalent of a slow-burn Netflix series that everyone initially hates, then becomes completely obsessed with once they realize what they're actually watching. This isn't just a game, it's the opening chapter of a political thriller disguised as a high school simulator. You think you're playing some generic Anime Academy story right up until the moment you realize your classmates are actually the children of war criminals, religious zealots, and corrupt politicians. And your cute little field studies? They're intelligence-gathering missions for an inevitable civil war. The genius is in how the game manipulates your expectations. For the first 20 hours, you're annoyed by all the dialogue and world building. Then something clicks, and you realize every seemingly pointless conversation was actually crucial setup for emotional devastation that comes later. That random NPC complaining about tax policies? Their village gets burned down in Game 3, and suddenly you understand why they were so worried. But here's what separates Cold Steel from every other slow start JRPG. The payoff is worth it. When the political intrigue finally explodes into open warfare, every character relationship you've built gets tested. Your best friend might become your enemy, your romantic interest might be on the wrong side of the conflict, and that teacher you trusted? They've been manipulating you from day one. Anime girls as video game consoles shouldn't work as a JRPG concept. It sounds like the dumbest idea ever pitched in a boardroom. But Neptunia Victory 2 pulled off something miraculous. It created the smartest parody of the gaming industry, while everyone was too busy judging it by its cover to notice the genius underneath. This game roasts everything. Modern gaming controversies, corporate greed, fanboy wars, review bombing, early access disasters, nothing is safe. The main villain is literally based on mobile game microtransactions, and watching the console goddesses fight against pay-to-win mechanics is more satisfying than any final boss in recent memory. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Underneath all the meta-humor and fourth wall breaking, there's actually a genuinely compelling story about friendship, responsibility, and what happens when your entire world gets consumed by negativity. The anime aesthetics aren't just eye candy, they're part of the satire that makes the serious moments hit even harder. The combat system ditches the series' usual simplicity for something surprisingly deep. Formation-based strategy that actually matters, combo systems that require timing, and boss fights that punish button mashing harder than most serious JRPGs. But most people never got past the character designs to discover that the gameplay evolved along with the writing. Yoko Taro is either a genius or completely insane, and NieR Replicant proves it doesn't matter which one is true. This game will lie to you, manipulate you, then force you to replay the same content multiple times while slowly revealing that everything you thought you knew was wrong. And somehow, by the end, you'll thank it for the emotional trauma. The setup sounds straightforward. Save your sick sister from a mysterious plague. Standard JRPG heroism, right? Wrong. By your fourth playthrough, you'll realize you've been committing genocide against a sentient species while being manipulated by an AI that's been lying to you for thousands of years. Your noble quest to save humanity? You're actually ensuring its extinction. But here's the really twisted part. The game makes you complicit in your own deception. Those shadow creatures you've been slaughtering without a second thought? They're not monsters, but I won't get into that one since it's a pretty big spoiler. Most people bounced off the original because of its janky combat and confusing structure. Version 1.22 fixes the gameplay while keeping every moment of existential horror that made the story unforgettable. The voice acting hits different when you understand what the characters are really saying. The soundtrack becomes haunting when you realize the beautiful melodies are actually funeral dirges. If you think JRPGs need world-ending threats and brooding protagonists to be compelling, Atelier Ryza is about to completely shatter that assumption. This is a game where the biggest crisis is running out of ingredients for your alchemy experiments, and somehow it's more addictive than any epic save-the-world adventure you've ever played. The controversy around Ryza wasn't about the story, it was about the character design. Gaming forums exploded with debates about her thigh proportions while completely missing the point that this game revolutionized the entire Atelier formula. The alchemy system isn't just crafting, it's puzzle solving that makes chemistry feel like magic. Every recipe becomes a mystery to unravel. But here's what nobody talks about. This game perfects the slice-of-life JRPG in ways that bigger franchises can't touch. There's genuine tension in gathering materials before sunset, real stakes in perfecting a recipe for your friend's problem. Authentic emotional weight in watching your childhood group drift apart as you all grow up and face adult responsibilities. The combat system throws out traditional turn-based mechanics for something that feels like controlled chaos. Action points build up, special attacks chain together, and your crafted items become devastating tactical weapons. But the real genius is how fighting feels secondary to exploration and discovery. Violence isn't the solution, creativity is. The Yakuza series ditched its beloved beat-em-up combat for turn-based JRPG mechanics and somehow created the best entry in the entire series. The fanbase lost their minds. Critics were confused. And Ichiban Kasuga became the most lovable JRPG protagonist in decades. The transition should have been a disaster. 20 years of bone-crunching street fights replaced by menu-based combat and summoning attacks inspired by Dragon Quest? It sounds like creative bankruptcy. But here's the genius. Ichiban doesn't just play JRPGs, he lives in one. His imagination transforms mundane street fights into epic fantasy battles, complete with job classes and special moves that defy physics. But the real masterstroke is how the story handles the genre shift. This isn't just a different gameplay style, it's a completely different philosophy. Kiryu was a stoic badass who solved problems with his fists. Ichiban is an optimistic dreamer who believes people can change, friendship matters, and even the worst criminals deserve second chances. The combat system reflects his worldview perfectly. The controversy was immediate and brutal. Longtime fans felt betrayed. Newcomers didn't understand the cultural context. Gaming journalists struggled to categorize it. But once the dust settled, something incredible emerged. This wasn't just a good Yakuza game or a good JRPG. It was proof that established franchises could completely reinvent themselves and come out stronger. Unicorn Overlord didn't just revive tactical JRPGs, it perfected them while everyone was looking the other way. Vanillaware has always been known for gorgeous 2D art, but this time they paired their visual mastery with gameplay depth that puts Fire Emblem to shame. We're talking about real-time tactical combat, where every unit positioning decision matters, every formation choice has consequences, and every battle feels like commanding an actual army instead of moving chess pieces around a board. But here's what separates this from every other strategy JRPG. The liberation system makes conquest feel meaningful. You're not just capturing territories for points. Every town you free unlocks new storylines, reveals character backstories, and changes how the world responds to your growing rebellion. The map becomes a living narrative that evolves based on your tactical decisions. The character recruitment system is addictive in ways that should be illegal. Over 60 unique units, each with their own combat specialties, personal quests, and relationship dynamics. Building the perfect army isn't just about stats, it's about creating a community of warriors who fight better together than apart. Pick one game from this list. Just one. Doesn't matter which one, the morally complex revenge story, the philosophical death simulator, the genre-changing Yakuza adventure, or the tactical masterpiece everyone ignored. Give it 20 hours. Not 20 minutes, not 2 hours. 20 full hours to show you what it's really about. Because here's what I've learned after playing dozens of JRPGs, the games that change you aren't always the ones that grab you immediately. Sometimes, the best experiences are the ones that make you work for them, challenge your assumptions, and refuse to hold your hand while they blow your mind.